Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast. We believe we have a mandate to bring godly change to our nation and the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. To further this cause, we give away a product every week that will empower you to get involved in changing your life and changing our world. You can register for our weekly giveaway by subscribing at truthandliberty.net. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive weekly updates on guests, news, and much more. This is an interactive live cast, and we welcome your questions. To ask a question during the live cast, use the comment or chat features. Now get ready to dive into this week's topics with our hosts on location in Colorado, USA.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Truth and Liberty livecast. I'm Richard Harris, and I'm joined tonight by lovely Karen Conrad, one of our board members and one of the founders of the Truth and Liberty Coalition tonight. And I'm so excited to have you with us. We have as our very special guest tonight, Ken Blackwell. Ken is the Senior Fellow for Human Rights and Constitutional Governance at the Family Research Council. And we're going to give a proper introduction for Ken in just a minute. But I just want everybody to know how glad we are that you're tuning in tonight and watching us, and hopefully you're doing that on our website at truthandliberty.net. It is going to be a fantastic broadcast tonight. I can't imagine a more qualified or better guest for us, and it's going to be just fantastic. But before we get too much further into it, I want to go ahead and hand it over to Karen, and she's got some important information she wants to share and some instructions and other things. So Karen, why don't you take it away?
Thank you so much, Richard, and welcome everybody. We're so glad to have you. It's been quite a week, hasn't it, Richard, in the news? So we have lots to talk about. So welcome everyone, and as Richard said, we really encourage you to watch this broadcast on truthandliberty.net. If you've not yet checked out that website, I encourage you to do so. Richard has done an amazing job, along with the rest of the Truth and Liberty team, of getting lots of information out there. As Andrew describes it, it's really kind of a hub of information. One of the things that Truth and Liberty does is we don't try to create all the content. We actually try to leverage what is out there, and we call it kind of a media hub. And so he's got articles, even, understanding who to vote for from iVoter Guide, what their platforms are. We've got the new item out here is the Family Research Council Worldview Materials. A lot of times we need help with understanding what is happening in the world, and that's going to be a great guide. Also, this is an interactive live cast, and what that means is we want to take questions from you. We want to hear from you. And we're going to give you some real live answers here towards the end of the program. And if we don't get to some of the questions, Richard is on every Monday, and he answers as many of the additional questions as possible. So how do you interact? It's really easy. If you're watching on truthandliberty.net or on awmi.net, we encourage you to go ahead and type your questions in the chat section. And if you're watching on social media, you can go ahead and put those questions in the comment section. We've got an entire team that is standing by, that is ready to take those questions, and they send them right on over to my screen here, and we answer as many questions as possible. One of the really neat things that we do also every Monday night is we have a giveaway. And so I want to congratulate last week's winner is Reverend William Cook. Congratulations, you won Flowing in the Supernatural by Pastor Greg Moore. And tonight, the product that we're giving away is Christian Philosophy by Andrew Womack. I don't know if you have that, Richard.
I do. I'm holding it up if they want to. There we go.
Yes, I'll tell you, this is one of the classics from Andrew. He really touches on some important topics, and it's really easy to be eligible to win. You just subscribe at truthandliberty.net, and you are eligible for that drawing. Also, I want to let you know there are some amazing events coming up at Charis Bible College and Andrew Womack Ministries. In just 1 week. It's really coming up quickly, Richard. We've got the Women's Arise, and that is with special guests Sue Sheriff and Dorothy Brown. That's November 7th through the 9th. And at that same time is the premiere of Queen of Persia, which is about Esther. And this, if you've not seen some of Robert and Elizabeth's musicals, make this a time that you make sure you get out to see it. This is a brand new musical. It's never been seen before. And that is, I believe, the evening of the 9th. And then we've got the Heart of Christmas coming up on December 13th through the 15th. And to register for any of these events or to purchase tickets, go to awmi.net/events. Also, Truth and Liberty is a 501c4. And as Andrew says, the reason that we're 501c4 is we want to be able to say some things.
That's right.
And so what does he say, Richard? It probably makes you like, as an attorney, go, I don't know, but we can say anything we want now?
Yeah, that's what he says. Now we can say whatever we want.
Yes. And so we really encourage you, if this has been a blessing for you, think about donating to Truth and Liberty. And while it's not tax deductible because it really is more for informational purposes, we just encourage you, if this has been a blessing, think about giving, and also to share this link or let your friends know to tune in. This is going to be an amazing program, but every Monday night we bring relevant guests and we provide you with information that is happening in the world today. So if you want to donate, go to truthandliberty.net/donate, or you can call the phone center at 719-635-1111. And lastly, if you want prayer, you want to learn more about this amazing ministry, please call us at 719-635-1111. We can answer any questions for you, or we would love to pray with you. So with that, Richard, we're so excited about our guest tonight.
Amen. Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful. So yeah, for everybody who hasn't signed up yet for the Queen of Persia, do that. That's going to be a fantastic show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite organizations on the front lines of the culture war in America, fighting for faith, family, and freedom, is the Family Research Council. And we've had Tony Perkins on the show before, and General Jerry Boykin. He's one of the vice presidents there. A couple of weeks ago, we went out and we're one of the co-sponsors and an exhibitor at the Values Voter Summit. And I'm just thrilled tonight to have with us the Senior Fellow for Human Rights at the Family Research Council, Ken Blackwell. And he's got more stuff on his resume than I could possibly cover in this introduction, but you can go on our website and get more information. I just want to say he's a former ambassador to the United Nations Human Rights Commission, serves on the board of numerous organizations, including the United States Air Force Academy Foundation, the National Rifle Association, First Liberty Institute, and more. And he is a frequent guest on many news programs and on Fox News, NBC News, and other places like that. Writes opinion pieces for the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and on and on and on it goes. We're just really honored and blessed to have you with us tonight, Ken Blackwell.
Richard, Karen, good to be with you. Let me just tell you, listening to that introduction, I'm kind of reminded of Dizzy Dean. He was introduced one night at a banquet, and when he got up to the mic, he said, you know, the older I get, the greater I was.
Well, in your case, I think that the older you get, the more accomplishments you've racked up. So thanks for being with us. It's so good to have you. And you know, Ken, I don't remember a guest that we've had on where I could just ask them about just about anything that's in the news and you could be qualified to speak on it. There's so much going on right now. And I think the hottest topic right now is that yesterday the United States military successfully cornered, and I don't necessarily want to say we killed because the guy, according to the president, blew himself up, but Al-Baghdadi was his name, Abu Bakr Al-Baghdadi, who was the head of ISIS. And he also, I think, was captured by the United States. And I don't remember, Ken, if it was in Afghanistan or Iraq, but we had him at Gitmo, and Barack Obama let him go. And then he went back and formed ISIS. And finally, we have taken this guy out. How significant is this development for peace in the Middle East, for the security of the United States?
It was a very well-executed operation, and it was a significant accomplishment by our folks on the ground. And while he took his own life, we drove him to a point where that was the only consequence that was available to him. And so the president cut off the head, the snake. But what he did on yesterday and today, he's basically said we're not going to be satisfied with just the head of the snake being gone. We're going to go after the entire snake and chop it up into little pieces and dispose of it. This president, as the commander-in-chief, signed off on a well-executed operation and took a significant player off of the board.
You know, I read that the operation was named after a young woman named Kayla Mueller, and that Kayla was actually working for human rights in Syria as a volunteer, and she was a Christian, was captured by ISIS and brutally tortured, raped, beaten, and eventually murdered by them. I even read that she may have even been raped by al-Baghdadi himself. And so how wonderful that they named that after her. And, you know, I think her story reminds us of how brutal and horrific this organization was. And, you know, it strikes me, Ken, that we had 8 years under the previous administration with ISIS, and we had red lines, and we had this, and we had that, and there was virtually no progress made in fighting that organization. And yet, in less than one term under this president, looks like it's been virtually obliterated. What's the difference in mindset that accounts for this result?
Well, this president has a command focus, and he has a decision-making discipline that takes in information from all available sources and key personnel, and then he makes a decision. He's not weak in the knees. He doesn't waffle, and he has a command focus. He has said for a long time that this guy had to be taken out, and he accomplished it. He never lost that focus. And he never lost the determination to get al-Baghdadi.
Well, so Ken, last week we had as our guest on Kamal Salim, who was raised in Lebanon as a devout Muslim, came to the United States to be a terrorist and so forth. And sometimes it looks like to me that, you know, this is an example of why elections are so important. And that the last administration, it seemed like, and maybe this is just me, but it seems like liberals in general do not want to recognize radical jihad and the radical Islamic jihad for what it really is. And it doesn't seem like President Trump has that problem. Do you share that observation?
Well, you know, look, the great libertarian Frederick Douglass once said, "Those who are whooped easiest are whooped most often." And this president understands that sort of reality, and so he made it his mission to, in fact, take this evil person on head on, and to show that we had a superior organization and operation in the American military, and he did just that. You know, the left, you know, is so cuddly when it comes to dealing with, you know, hardcore killers that it is almost nauseating. It's just great that we have a president that understands that these Islamists, you know, have a mission, and that is to take us out. And he's saying, "No, not on my watch." That's the difference.
That's right. That's right.
It's so good. You know, one of the things that I noticed as I was watching the headlines after the news conference, and I was like, you know, what are the headlines going to be? This is a great opportunity for the left to come out and say, you know what, we are for our country, and putting away, you know, or aside the political differences. And the headline that came out was just about how President Trump did not communicate with the Democrats. In addition, the Washington Post headline just was nauseating. And, you know, it's just really difficult to understand what is happening, that we're putting politics ahead of, like you say, good versus evil. Can you comment on that, Ken?
Well, look, it's Lewis Carroll, through his fictional character Humpty Dumpty and others, said, "He who defines is the master." And, you know, how we define the enemy, how we define the situation, actually is so important as to how we will deal with it. And so if you begin to say that al-Baghdadi was a bifocal theologian and scholar, you misdefine how important it was to take out this evil terrorist. And so that second Washington Post headline was not only weak-kneed, it was despicable, and it was an affront to the men and women who put their lives on the line, trying to make sure that we're a secure nation, and that we go after and take out those who would do harm to our nation.
Amen. Well, the timing is pretty interesting on this, that it comes right on the heels of the president's announcement that he was going to pull U.S. troops out of Syria, and the kind of political firestorm that resulted from that. There was a lot of concern, even among conservatives, about the president's decision to pull out of Syria, because the fear, I guess, was that it would leave the Kurds, our allies in the Middle East, and Christian communities in that region vulnerable to genocide or what have you. And sure enough, Turkey invaded. But within a few days, the president had a ceasefire in place. And I'm just curious, Ken, about your observations on the timing of these things. Are these events all connected, first of all?
Well, it's hard to think that they are connected. But let me just say that the president makes quick decisions when he needs to adapt to a new circumstance that was not anticipated. Look, the president has committed to bringing our troops home. He does not believe in endless wars, but he also does not believe in losing battles that are important to the advancement of civilization and to our national security here at home. And so I think what happened was that the president, in an effort to make good to his promise to shrink our footprint and to bring our folks back home, he saw that there was the real possibility of creating a vacuum that the Russians and the Iranians and even the Chinese in one way or another would feel. And so I think when it's all said and done, the president has made a decision and is implementing a strategy to shrink our footprint, or at least to move our footprint back, from that border with Turkey, deeper into an area where we are still within striking distance. We still can give support to the Kurds and provide protection to Christians in the area. This president, through his State Department and through the International Commission on Religious Liberty, has, and as was articulated in his speech to the UN, he has put his seal of approval and his determination behind advancing religious liberty, because he understands what I think we appreciate, and that is that if you study political systems over the course of history, particularly totalitarian systems, authoritarian systems, and now big welfare states, they have two characteristics in common. One, they try to run God and faith out of the public square. And two, they try to destroy the family. In the American experience and in human history, the family is the incubator of liberty. And so big centralized governments, totalitarian, authoritarian, and big welfare states, they want government to, in fact, replace God. That second paragraph in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. My dad used to say that's a highfalutin way of, of saying what any knucklehead should be able to get. That we, in fact, are not all equal in size. We're not all equal in wealth. We're not all the same color, the same ethnicity, but we're all equal in that God has invested in each and every one of us, his spirit and our individual responsibility and human will. That's why religious liberty is the first human right, because it reflects the individual conscious. And as a consequence of the president understanding that, he will, in fact, as he said to the United Nations, the United States will always defend religious liberty. Now, let me say that there are a couple of approaches. You can have a foreign policy where the United States is a gardener or a mechanic. We cannot be a mechanic where we tinker here, tinker there, tinker everywhere. But we can be a gardener where we nurture the human spirit and religious liberty, and we provide technical and monetary assistance to those folks who want to be free. And that's why I know he will not turn his back on the Kurds. He will say things like, we're not going to be there forever, but he understands how important those folks have been to our missions over there in the Middle East.
Oh, I caught that too, and I thought it was really interesting that Lindsey Graham commented afterwards, and he really had he backtracked maybe a little bit on his approach with Syria after he got a better understanding, but also that President Trump saw the importance of making the oil fields, like protecting those oil fields, because when that oil money gets in the hands of the wrong people, that is where religious liberty is no longer in effect. And so can you comment on that, Ken?
I think you really nailed it, Karen. I think the president understands that in terms of strategic American interests and the interests of not only our national security, but the security of the region, those oil fields are of crucial importance. And so we will have enough to protect those oil fields. And we're not going to, he understands that from the Middle East to Venezuela, that there are always, forces that are counter to American interests that will fill a vacuum. Again, whether it's the Chinese and the Russians in Venezuela, or the Iranians and the Russians and the Syrians in the Middle East.
Ken, going back to the subject of religious liberty, your most recent opinion piece came out, and it's titled "The Democrats' Misguided War on Faith," and I thought that was excellent. Do you feel like there is? Obviously, you do. There's a war on faith going on in the Democratic Party today.
Oh yeah, you remember in 2012, they in fact took God out of their platform. And through a sleight of hand, a couple of insiders had to get it back. And even though the voice vote on the floor said keep God out, the chair at the time said, "Oh, the include God vote has it." Yeah. But they've shown their hand, because look, what they are after is to create a socialist state. Mm-hmm. They'll put a lot of labels on it, but even if you put a happy face on it and call it the big welfare state, again, I go back to the fact that, let's stay with that second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. So you can't have, there's no government on the face of the earth that can give you your human rights. Mm-hmm. Human rights are not grants from government, they're gifts from God.
Amen.
And so the way big government systems have to take over God's space is by running God out of the public square.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Democrats are really bent on doing, running God out of the public square and running God out of our educational systems and running God, and keeping God, within the four walls of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And that is inconsistent with the American experience, because the framers of the Constitution understood that freedom of religion in the public square was what was going to make us different, and that there was not a government on the face of the earth that could grant us our human rights. They could only respect them and, in fact, protect them.
Yeah, well, you said they want to keep us inside the four walls of the church, and I used to think that was their goal, but I think they actually want to go a little bit further than that now. They want to silence us even in our pulpits, because Beto O'Rourke a couple weeks ago at a town hall, I think it was, on LGBT issues, was asked, what should we do about churches and religious organizations that don't embrace the LGBT ideology? And he responded that if he were president, he would take away their tax-exempt status. And that's pretty radical.
Yeah, that's radical. And let me just share with you, because again, I see the family as being the incubator of liberty. That's why we at the Family Research Council work so hard to make sure that we protect families and we empower families. I had a great uncle. You guys have probably never heard of him. His name was D. Hart Hubbard. And my uncle D. Hart was the first Black American to win an Olympic gold medal in an individual event in track and field.
Wow.
And he won that gold medal in the 1924 Olympic Games. And that year, he had qualified for 3 events, the long jump, the high hurdles, and the 100-yard dash. And he was in a transatlantic debate with Eric Liddell as to who was the fastest human being on the face of the earth. And when he got to Paris in 24, they told him that the 100 and the high hurdles were white-only events. And he couldn't participate. He won. He set the world record in the long jump. But when he came home, he told my mom's generation, he said God had blessed him to let him witness something, to let him witness Eric Liddell's fidelity to his faith. And that Eric Liddell could have chose to put his faith on the back burner, to move it aside and to run to worldly glory, but he chose fidelity to his faith. And that's the call for all of us. Bible-believing Christians must have a fidelity to our faith.
Amen.
We, in fact, cannot get locked into these worldly misdeeds where, in fact, we are so, if it feels good, do it. We in this country are a rules-based society and culture. The left wants to turn us into a chaotic, chaos-based culture where you have unpredictability and you have a situation where might, gets the defeats right. And we just can't allow that to happen.
That's
right.
But
it means that we cannot sit on the sidelines. And that's what 2020, this 2020 election is calling for. It is a call to action. We cannot sit out, or in fact, the left will take the election and they will radically transform our country, something that Barack Obama and his team tried to do, but we pushed back, and then we turned the whole table around in the 2016 election by electing a disruptor like Trump, who was not going to buy into a status quo that Reagan used to be fond of saying, that the status quo is Latin for the mess that we're in.
Great.
We had a president. We now have a president that is not embracing a stale status quo, and he's gotten America back on the track of singular greatness.
Wow. Well, Ken, you said so much in there. Just as a clarification, Eric Liddell, was he the guy that the movie Chariots of Fire was done about? Okay, just so everybody knows who you're talking about. He refused to run on a Sunday because of his conviction of the commandment to honor the Sabbath. And
absolutely.
So fantastic point there. You're talking about unalienable rights. It's mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. And I was thinking about this subject the other day, and the leftists and their willingness to sacrifice rights, to infringe on freedom of religion and freedom of speech. And it kind of just dawned on me, I don't think they really believe that rights are unalienable. And I'm wondering if the reason that they're so willing to discard them is because they don't believe that, and if that's tied at all to their rejection of God. You're saying they want to push God out of everything so they can impose the totalitarian system, and it all comes back to God, doesn't it? Because
it really does, and it comes back to a fundamental understanding of natural law and the God of nature. And our framers understood it, and American exceptionalism turns just on that notion.
That's right.
Again, let me underscore that our human rights are not grants from any government; they're gifts from God, and governments can only promote and protect.
That's right.
Your human rights.
Yeah, and so if you don't believe in God, especially the God of the Bible, then you don't have a foundation in your worldview for rights being unalienable. And
you're absolutely right. And then whatever regime is in becomes the grantor of your so-called
your status.
Freedom.
Yeah. Well, very good. So I saw a poll yesterday or today, I don't remember, but it said that 70% of millennials surveyed believe that the United States should become a socialist country. And I would just solicit your comments on that, Ken. That's an alarming number. And I wonder if they even really know what socialism is.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, because we've moved the study of great works out of our education systems. Aristotle said that there is a creative tension between the organized power of the state and individual liberty. The more powerful the state, the less free we are as individuals. And that's why the framers of the Constitution, understood that they had to harness the power and reach of government. And they gave us a constitution that, in fact, put that harness on government and optimized individual liberty. And that, in combination with free markets, has made us the most powerful, the most free, the most economically viable country in all of human history. And so you have these folks who continue to promote the big welfare state. Everything is free, and what all that does is accelerate government spending. It in fact creates anemic economic growth. What we realized was that when the president came on board, and I was part of his transition team dealing with some domestic policies, that he needed to unharness the power of our economy by working on and reducing regulatory red tape. And what he did by doing that and cutting taxes, he took $3 trillion that were offshore and created an environment where those dollars came back into the country and fueled economic expansion and job creation. And now, whether it's Hispanics or Blacks or women, we're hitting some record lows in terms of unemployment. And what we're seeing, our labor participation rate has ratcheted it back up, and family income is up. Wow. And so if you take a look at the big economic picture and you use any reasonable measure, this president has done an A+ job. What I try to feed back into the system and those who are working with the president on a day in, day out basis is that the one vote that people tend to look at and put likability, the likability factor at a great weight is President of the United States. And so what the Democrats are trying to do, going back to Lewis Carroll and he who defines us is the master, they're trying to make through their projection of this president and his actions and his policies, they're trying to make him the most evil person, that has ever lived, to try to take down his likability factor. But there is a part of this president that he is the most everyday billionaire that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
He's a regular guy. Sometimes he's a little bit too earthy, but the fact of the matter is he connects with people that are not on his economic station, and his policies have created not a welfare state but an opportunity society. And I actually think that we have to do a better job of showing people the difference there.
Yeah.
And we'll take his likability factor up. And the reason that's important, and I use these 3 states as an example, is that he won Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin collectively by less than 100,000 votes. That means that we have to get out there and we got to go neighbor to neighbor, church member to church member, family member to family member, and we have to put on the line why this is such a crucial turning point election for the United States of America. This guy has rebuilt our military, got our economy going again, our family's income up, and we have to keep America on that track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't want to monopolize this, but there's one headline, and we're going to have to take some questions here in a minute, but there's one headline I want you to comment on because I don't want it to go unnoticed. And it was the president received an award for his work on reforming the justice system, and it's called the Bipartisan Justice Award by an African-American organization. And did you see that headline, Ken? And do you have any thoughts on that?
I saw the headline, and I worked with the president and Jared Kushner and Brooke Rollins on criminal justice reform. And as much as the left hates it, this guy got done what Barack Obama only talked about. This guy got done what a lot of folks on the left has talked about. We've created a system that will in fact give folks a second chance, particularly nonviolent folks who have transgressed the law. We are looking for not only creating opportunities for them to work, but to hold families together. And I can tell you, look, the president got about 12% of the African American, or 8% of the African American vote the last time around. I think he can more than double that.
Wow.
If he more than doubles that, it's Katie bar the door. And we're off to the races, and we're going to win some of those crystal.
That'd be a political earthquake. That'd be huge, man. That'd be awesome.
But the president says, why are you talking about 12, 15%? I'm going to get 40 or more.
All right, go for it. Well,
I
bet we've had a lot of questions come in, Ken. Karen, have we got any questions from the viewers you'd like to?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of questions coming in. If I could just start with just a comment and a question before we get to the viewers' ones is, Richard, when you're talking about socialism and Ken, you were talking about part of the family, really the value of work, it just seems like there is a movement to get the people dependent on the government and move that government in place of God for people's source. And socialism, to me, it sounds like great. We actually, in our vision and mission, we talk about really blowing apart the false utopia that the liberals are bringing forth. And socialism is just that, a false utopia, when in fact it makes people dependent on the government and it moves them away from God as their source. So I think that is such a key issue that you brought up, Richard and Ken. Thank you so much for discussing that. And I think if we talk about the truths and where socialism goes, it's going to help our young people to better understand what it truly is.
Yeah. All they have to do is kind of look south. Look at Venezuela. Look, they turn. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Any objective analysis, socialism, communism, and big welfare states don't work.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you for that, Ken. All right. Well, we have a lot of questions here. I'm going to start out with a really good one here for you, Ken. This comes in from Shar Wilcock on chat, and she says, Mr. Blackwell, do you see Hillary Clinton taking another run at the White House in 2020?
I can only hope that she has a trick up her sleeve and that she plays it and we have a do-over, because we'll have the same conclusion. You know, Hillary Clinton is angry, and she believes that she's entitled, and she embraces a notion of globalism and big government that is counter to the forward movement of the nation. Again, we just want to underscore the jobs. We're having a hard time filling the jobs that our economy is now making, and this president has changed the flow of capital back into this country, and so Hillary Clinton. The only thing better than Hillary Clinton would be the self-proclaimed and proud socialist, from Vermont.
Bernie.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is from Charmaine on chat, and she says, do you feel that the United States, by withdrawing troops, has handed Syria into Russia's hands? And how do you see this playing out in years to come?
Anybody who tells you that they understand what's going on in the Middle East and they can predict the future there is probably some kin to Walt Disney. Look, I think there's been a combination of things. I think our presence in the Middle East is there. The nature of warfare has changed, and it's going to even change more with 5G and the Internet of Things. We will have a presence there. This president is doing strategic things like protecting those oil fields. But he is saying you can't keep doing, playing the game the same way and expecting a different result. So he is mixing it up. The other thing that you have to appreciate about this president is that he's done something that other presidents just talked about, making and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which it is not only strengthening our relationship and our resolve in terms of our partnership with Israel. It's a clear signal that we're not going to abandon the Middle East, and I think it also signals that this president knows who our friends are, who our enemies are, and who's masquerading as something that they're not.
Mm-hmm. I would throw in there, I think Syria has been an ally of the Soviet Union and the Russians for long before ISIS came on the scene. And so it's not like we're giving Russia a net win there or anything. My concern would be about Turkey, and they're getting more cozy with Syria and Iran and Russia. And they've been a member of NATO. And so do you have any thoughts about what direction they're headed?
I think the Turks are moving closer and closer to becoming a strong adherents of Sharia law, and as a consequence, that will put the well-being of religious minorities in jeopardy. And you're absolutely right; they are already dancing around with the Russians and the Chinese, and that is worrisome, and we have to continue within the framework of NATO to tell them that we're checking what jersey they're wearing.
Okay, this is coming in from Tom on chat, and he says, could you please speak to the new information that is being revealed about how the deep state has actually been involved in promoting ISIS?
Oh. No, I'm always tempted to take a swipe at the deep state. Brennan, when he was in there and head of the CIA, and it was no mistaking that he and Senator Secretary Kerry and President Obama and his advisor were more cozy with the Iranian, more accommodating, with the mullahs of Iran than this president, and so it wouldn't surprise me if there were in the civil service and in the career foreign service ranks folks who embrace their worldview and their agenda, and one of the things that I do know is that they're so implanted that they're not easily rooted out. So it wouldn't surprise me if there are some holdovers that still want to dance with Iran and are more accommodating of the trickery of the Chinese, but it is a new day, and this is a president that methodically, and I think he's going to need another 4 years to finish the job, but to methodically he's changed the map. He's the playbook is substantially different, and our weakness is less. We are less predictable, and therefore we're not weak any longer as a major force in these geopolitical theaters.
It's almost like watching a chess game sometimes between what's happening with the decisions, from the White House, both between the Republicans and the Democrats and international. And it just seems like once you think like someone's got a leg up on something, you go over and it's like it's switched again. How much of what we see is purely politically motivated? It seems to be almost 100% to me, but I'd love your take on that, Ken.
Yeah, I think let's take a recent example of the operation, to get al-Baghdadi. It took the CIA and all our intelligence forces. It took the National Security Council, the administration, State Department. It was a well-coordinated and this is one example where at least those folks responsible for executing that operation rose above the petty, the divisive politics of the day and accomplished a mission that served the greater interests of the American people. But there are still, I mean, so we shift from that to this impeachment, and it is highly political. And even you have Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats trying to rewrite history and say that Barack Obama involved Republicans in all of his decisions, his strategic decisions or strategic operations didn't happen. And so for them now to say this is trampling on the American Constitution, where there's no constitutional obligation that the president had to call Nancy Pelosi or her team. What they need to do right now is to recognize that the president did a great job, and all of those involved in this operation did a great job for the American people and American interests.
That's right.
So it's the swamp is swampy and highly political, but there are some occasions where good people are able to transcend, the swamp and get the job done.
I like what Andrew says. He says Donald Trump may not have drained the swamp, but he's lowered the water level so you can see the critters.
Think there is a Democrat that actually would step up into a position of just being, taking a position of what's best for the people and the nation, it would be amazing. But we just have not seen that. They are.
Yeah, I keep trying to get my buddy, the good senator from West Virginia, who was also Brother Joe, who was also a treasurer at the same time I was treasurer of the state of Ohio, to step up. But his head pops up every now and then. But I'm trying to get him to stand straight up, because he could be a force. He could be a force for unifying the country around strategically important matters that require true bipartisanship.
Mm. Well, we've got about 5.5 minutes left. Do we have any more questions?
We do. So this is coming in from Elizabeth on chat, and she says, what about Convention of States? Will it help take control of what is going on in our government, and is it a good thing?
Well, I tell you, I think it would be. It's not an easy lift, but one of the things that that we know is that the beauty of our system is that our states are 50 laboratories where new things are tried, and new combinations of natural resources and pure human intellectual power are put into play, and that sort of federalism cuts across this notion of a big, powerful, centralized government that is not only bureaucratic but incompetent to meet the needs of over 320 million people across 50 states and other territories.
That's very good. Do we have time for one more question, Richard?
Sure, we have time. Yes.
Okay, great.
Let's do it.
This is a concern that has come up frequently with our viewers, and it's coming in from Scott Chat, who's on chat. And he says, how can we ensure our voter rolls are accurate?
Our what?
Voter rolls.
Oh, look, there is such a opportunity for mischief with bloated voter rolls that just haven't been cleaned up for years. Look, the decentralization of our system is both a blessing and a challenge. It's a blessing because it makes it hard for any evildoer to pick the lock and corrupt across the entire system. It is a challenge because it involves cooperation and collaboration between 50 states and Homeland Security, 50 states and one another to clean up voter rolls. For the last 10 years, we have focused on making sure that those folks who cast their ballots are casting legal ballots, because an illegal ballot invalidates or neutralizes a legal ballot. Before that, we were really focused in on making sure that the people had access to the ballot box. Now what we want to do is to make sure that people who are voting are eligible to vote and they are who they claim to be. And that's why simple things like voter ID across systems is so important. And when you stop to think about, you can't buy a lot of things. You can't even take out a library book without showing some form of ID. You can't get on a plane without some form of ID. It is so simple and so inexpensive for every voter to have an ID that's something that we should depend on and insist upon.
Well, I'm going to jump in here, and we've got about 1:40 left. Ken, thank you so much for joining us. What an amazing conversation this has been, and I'm sure that our viewers have enjoyed it and been educated and edified, and so thank you so much. What an amazing guest you've been. I just wanted to thank everybody for watching tonight. Let you know that next week on Truth and Liberty, Andrew's going to be back, and we're going to have as our guest Bill Federer. So that's going to be fantastic. What a great American, what a wonderful, amazing historian he is. He always has a unique historical perspective on things, and I'm sure you'll be blessed and be edified by that. I also wanted to remind people that next week, next Tuesday, is Election Day across the country. Now, we're in an off year here, but there are several states that have every state has important elections. Even here in Colorado, we've got a couple ballot measures, but Louisiana, Mississippi, Virginia, I believe, they do their elections in the odd-numbered years, and they've got some really important races there. And so be sure to turn out and vote, folks. And you can check out iVoter Guide. We've got a link on our website where you can get information on the candidates and learn how to vote. So we encourage you to do that and share that information with your friends. So thanks again, everybody, for watching, and we hope that you'll tune in next week on Truth and Liberty. And again, it's truthandliberty.net, and be sure to register and attend one of these amazing events coming up here at Andrew Womack Ministries: Esther, Queen of Persia, Women Arise, and then the Heart of Christmas. So you'll be blessed. Thank you again for watching on the Truth and Liberty livecast.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net. Truth and Liberty is viewer supported. If you'd like to help us continue our live casts, you can make a donation at truthandliberty.net or by calling our phone center at 719-635-1111. Our prayer ministers are there to help you with your donations and to pray with you.